So here's the thing about the Galactic Medical Council. They pride themselves on being prepared for absolutely everything. Got a silicon-based life form with crystalline fractures? No problem. Need to perform surgery on a methane-breathing blob? Easy. Got a species that reproduces by exploding? Well, that's what the reinforced walls are for. But humans? Yeah, humans were about to break their entire system. It started on a Tuesday. Well, Tuesday by station time. Space doesn't really have Tuesdays, but someone decided we needed them anyway, probably for tax purposes. The emergency beacon went off on Station Mercy 7, which was the galaxy's most advanced medical facility. Assuming you ignored the weird smell in Sector C that nobody could identify, Dr. Vorash Krent, chief physician and proud owner of 6 compound eyes and an obsession with proper documentation, was having his morning stimulant when the call came in. Vorash was an insectoid from Chitros Prime, which meant he had exoskeleton plating, mandibles that clicked when he was annoyed, and absolutely zero tolerance for medical mysteries. "We have incoming," announced Nurse Plix, who was basically a sentient pile of translucent goo in a medical uniform. Plix had the remarkable ability to be anxious about everything simultaneously, which, in fairness, was a useful trait in emergency medicine. "Species?" Vorash clicked his mandibles, already pulling up protocols. "Human." Vorash paused. "Human? As in those Death World primates who keep showing up in places they shouldn't survive?" "That's the one, doctor." The patient arrived on a stretcher, and he looked absolutely terrible. Captain Jake Morrison, according to his ID chip, had been involved in a catastrophic freighter engine explosion. His ship's automated systems had managed to stuff him in an escape pod and fire him at the nearest station, which was basically the universe's way of playing hot potato with a corpse. Because Jake Morrison was very, very dead. Vorash ran every scan in the medical database. No heartbeat, no brain activity, no respiratory function, no electrical impulses, nothing. The human was producing all the vital signs of a decorative rock. "Time of death," Vorash announced, checking his chronometer. 1400 hours station time. Plix made a gurgling sound that indicated distress. "Should we, try to revive him?" "With what exactly?" "The being has no cardiac rhythm, no neural activity, and his cells are entering decomposition." "He's deceased, Nurse Plix, extremely deceased. Possibly the most deceased I've seen all week. They ran the protocols anyway because that's what you do when you have 6 medical degrees and a pathological fear of malpractice suits. Shock paddles, chemical stimulants, neural jump starts, even that weird Andromedan technique involving harmonic crystals that nobody really understood, but sometimes worked anyway. Nothing. Jake Morrison remained impressively dead. Vorash filled out Form 7 Alpha, which was the official declaration of cessation of biological function. He filled out Form 7 Beta, which was the same thing, but in triplicate. He filled out Form 7 Gamma, which existed purely because Administrator Quelix had too much time on his hands. "Tag him, bag him, send him to cold storage," Vorash instructed, "and somebody contact the Galactic Human Embassy. They'll want to arrange transport of the remains." Plix, bless his gelatinous heart, gently placed the identification tag on Jake's toe. The body was loaded onto a hover gurney and wheeled down to the morgue, which was in sub-level 3 right next to the cafeteria. The station designer had thought this was efficient. Everyone else thought it was disturbing, but here we are. The morgue attendant, a slug-like creature named Grimp who always looked 3 minutes away from a nap, logged Jake into drawer 47B. He set the temperature to preserve human tissue, made a note in his datapad, and shuffled off to deal with the 17 other deceased beings currently in his care. Back in his office, Vorash began drafting the official report to the Galactic Medical Council. Human specimen expired due to catastrophic trauma. All revival protocols attempted. Subject unresponsive. Death confirmed by multiple diagnostic systems. Funeral arrangements pending. He sent it off with a sense of satisfaction. Another case closed. Another medical emergency handled with precision and professionalism. What Vorash didn't know, what nobody on that station knew, was that human biology had a few features that weren't in any of the galactic medical databases. Features that were about to cause the biggest bureaucratic nightmare in medical history. Administrator Quelix received Vorash's death report with what could only be described as predatory enthusiasm. Quelix was an avian species from Talanus IV, which meant he had feathers, a beak sharp enough to open official correspondence, and an unholy love of paperwork that bordered on the erotic. He burst into Vorash's office 3 hours after Jake's death, carrying a data tablet that was probably older than some civilizations. "Dr. Krent, we have a situation." Vorash looked up from his medical journal. "The human is dead, Administrator. I fail to see what situation could possibly arise from that." "The situation," Quelix said, his feathers ruffling with barely contained excitement/anxiety, "is that we've never processed a human death before. Do you have any idea how many forms this requires?" I filled out the standard death certification forms. Quelix made a sound like a bird choking on a particularly large seed. Standard. My dear doctor, humans are classified as Category 7 biohazards due to their death world origin. That means we need Form 3117C for exotic species disposal, Form 412J for potential pathogen containment, Form 891Q for notifying their bizarre governmental structures, and that's just the beginning. How many forms are we talking about? 17. In triplicate. With foo additional copies for the Medical Ethics Board, the Xenobiology Archives, and the Department of Unnecessary Redundancy Department. Vorash's mandibles clicked in what could only be described as profound irritation. "Fine. Send me the templates. I'll fill them out." That's when Grimp called. The morgue attendant's voice came through the comm system with the energy of someone who'd just had their existential crisis validated. "Dr. Krent, we have a problem in cold storage." "What kind of problem?" The human kind." Vorash felt a sinking sensation in his digestive tract. "Explain." "He's not here." "What do you mean he's not there? Bodies don't just walk out of morgue drawers." "Yeah, well, apparently this one did." Vorash and Quelix rushed down to sub-level 3 with Plix wobbling anxiously behind them. The morgue was exactly as it should be, which is to say cold, sterile, and vaguely depressing. Drawer 47B was standing open, empty, except for the identification tag that had been on Jake's toe. "Security footage," Vorash demanded. "Now!" Grimp pulled it up on his datapad. The timestamp showed 20 minutes ago. The drawer had been closed, definitely occupied. Then, slowly, it began to open from the inside. A hand emerged, then an arm. Then Jake Morrison sat up, looked around with an expression of profound confusion, and climbed out. He stood there for a moment, wobbling slightly, then looked directly at the security camera and shrugged. Then he walked out the door. "That," Quelix whispered, "is not standard deceased behavior." Plix made a sound like water going down a drain. "How is he moving?" He was dead. Multiple scans confirmed it. No heartbeat, no brain activity, no respiratory function. Vorash's scientific mind was doing backflips. "Run a station-wide bioscan, find that human, and somebody check if our diagnostic equipment is malfunctioning." "Should I still fill out the death certificates?" Quelix asked, clutching his datapad. "Let's find the allegedly deceased first, then we'll worry about your forms." The bioscan pinged almost immediately. Human life signs detected in Sector E Level 2. The cafeteria. Of course it was the cafeteria. They found Jake Morrison sitting at a table absolutely destroying a plate of what the station optimistically called food. He was surrounded by at least 7 different dishes, eating with the enthusiasm of someone who'd skipped lunch, which, in fairness, he had. Being dead really works up an appetite. "Captain Morrison," Vorash said carefully, approaching like Jake might explode at any moment. You're awake." Jake looked up, mouth full of something purple and gelatinous. "Yeah? Was I asleep?" "You were dead." Jake swallowed. "Pretty sure I'd remember that." "You had no heartbeat, no brain activity, no respiratory function. You were clinically deceased for 3 hours and 22 minutes. "Huh." Jake considered this while taking another bite. "I mean, I did have a pretty bad headache when I woke up. That explosion was rough. You're not understanding, Plix gurgled. You were dead. Capital D, end of biological function, preparing your funeral kind of dead. Jake frowned. Look, I feel fine now. Little hungry, obviously. Could use a shower. But I'm definitely not dead. Vorash pulled out his medical scanner and ran it over Jake. Heartbeat, strong and steady. Brain activity, normal for a human, whatever that meant. Respiratory function, active. Blood pressure, slightly elevated, but probably because he was surrounded by aliens telling him he was supposed to be dead. This is impossible, Vorash muttered. Is it? Jake asked. Because I'm pretty sure I'm sitting right here very much alive and you're the one insisting I'm dead. Which seems like more of a you problem than a me problem. Quellix's feathers were standing completely on end. But I already started filing the death certificates. Then unfile them? Jake suggested. That's not how bureaucracy works. The station-wide alert went out at exactly 1600 hours. Attention all personnel. Be advised that a human previously declared deceased is currently ambulatory. Approach with caution. Do not panic. Please report any sightings to medical immediately. This did not help with the not panicking part. Vorash assembled what he optimistically called a medical retrieval team, which consisted of himself, Plix 2 security officers who looked like they'd rather be literally anywhere else, and Quellix, who insisted on coming, because proper documentation requires direct observation of irregular events. They didn't need to look very hard. Jake was still in the cafeteria, now on his third helping of something that resembled pasta but probably wasn't. Captain Morrison, Vorash began, trying to sound authoritative. We need you to return to medical for a complete examination. Can I finish eating first? You've consumed enough calories to sustain a small colony. Yeah, well, apparently I was dead for 3 hours. That really takes it out of you. Jake finally agreed to come back to medical, mostly because the cafeteria staff were getting nervous about him eating their entire inventory. Vorash ran every diagnostic scan in the database, then ran them again, then called in a specialist to run them a third time because surely he had to be missing something. All the scans came back the same. Jake Morrison was perfectly healthy. Not just healthy, but in better shape than when he'd arrived. His cellular damage from the explosion had somehow repaired itself. His vital signs were textbook normal. His brain showed no signs of trauma or oxygen deprivation. I don't understand, Vorash said, staring at the readouts. 3 hours ago, you had no cardiac function whatsoever. Jake scratched his head. Look, Doc, I'm not a medical expert, but I did pay attention in my mandatory crew safety briefings. Humans have this thing called a backup cardiovascular system. Every alien in the room stared at him. A backup, Vorash repeated slowly. Yeah, it kicks in during extreme trauma. Main heart stops, backup system takes over. Keeps blood flowing to vital organs while the body reboots itself. Takes a few hours, but it works. You have a spare heart? No, it's not a spare heart. It's more like auxiliary pumps in the major blood vessels. They're usually dormant, but when the primary heart fails, they activate automatically. Human biology professor explained it way better than I can. Plix made a sound like a backed-up drain. That's not in any of the medical databases. Have you checked the human medical databases? There was a long, uncomfortable silence. You're telling me, Vorash said, his mandibles clicking with barely controlled frustration, that your species has a biological backup system that can mimic death so effectively that it fools advanced medical scanners, and nobody thought to mention this in the galactic medical literature. Jake shrugged. I mean, it's in our medical literature. Did you guys not read it? We, Quellix said quietly, assumed your medical literature was primitive. Oh, it absolutely is. But it does cover the basics of human biology, like the backup cardiovascular system, and the redundant oxygen storage, and the whole thing where humans can survive clinical death for extended periods if the conditions are right. Vorash pulled up the human medical database, which he'd never actually looked at before because, why would he? Humans were newcomers to galactic civilization. Their medicine was probably the equivalent of using leeches and hoping for the best. Except it wasn't. The database was extensive, detailed, and absolutely terrifying. Humans had survived being impaled through the chest. They'd survived being frozen solid and thawed out. They'd survived exposure to vacuum, radiation levels that would kill most species instantly, and something called rabies that was apparently just their immune system deciding to wage war on their own brain. There were documented cases of humans surviving clinical death for over an hour before revival. Cases of humans walking around with massive internal injuries that should have killed them instantly. Cases of humans whose hearts had stopped, restarted on their own, and the humans just went about their day. "This is," Vorash said quietly, "the most ridiculous biology I've ever seen." "Hey," Jake protested, "it keeps us alive." "That's exactly the problem. You're not supposed to be alive. By all reasonable medical standards, you should have stayed dead." "Sorry for the inconvenience?" Plix was reading through the human medical files with mounting horror. "Doctor, there's a case here of a human who survived being struck by lightning 7 times. 7 times. There's another one who fell out of an aircraft without a parachute and lived," added one of the security officers who'd been reading over Plix's shoulder. "This one had a metal rod go completely through their skull and just got annoyed about it." Quelix contributed, his voice slightly hysterical. Jake nodded. "Yeah, humans are pretty hardy. Comes from evolving on a death world. You kind of have to be tough to survive childhood on Earth." "Your children survived this planet?" "Well, most of them." Vorash sat down heavily in his chair. His entire medical education, 6 degrees from the finest institutions in the galaxy, felt suddenly inadequate. "This changes everything." "Does it, though?" Jake asked. "I mean, I'm fine now. Can I go?" "Absolutely not. I need to run at least 40 more tests. I need to understand this backup system. I need to know how your cellular regeneration works. I need to document this properly. I really just want to get back to my ship." "Your ship exploded." "Oh, right. Can I at least get a shower then?" That's when Jake's crew arrived and things somehow got even more complicated. The crew of the Lucky Break, Jake's unfortunately named freighter, consisted of 4 humans who looked remarkably unconcerned about their captain's recent death. "Oh good, you're up," said First Mate Lucy Remmer, a woman with short red hair and the demeanor of someone who'd seen too much weird stuff to be surprised anymore. "How many times is that now?" Jake thought about it. 3? "Third time you've died. 4th time you've been clinically dead if we count that thing on Proxima Station." Vorash's mandibles were clicking so fast they sounded like maracas. "I'm sorry, what?" Lucy looked at the doctor with the patience of someone explaining something very obvious to a small child. "Jake dies sometimes, it's kind of his thing. Always comes back, though. We stopped panicking around the 2nd time." "You stopped panicking?" "Well, yeah, what's the point? He's going to wake up, be hungry, and complain about a headache. Tale as old as time." Engineer Marcus Chen, a stocky man with grease stains on his uniform, nodded. "First time was that reactor breach on the mining station. Died for like 40 minutes. Scared the hell out of us, then he sat up in the morgue and asked for breakfast." "Second time was the vacuum exposure," added pilot Sam Rodriguez. "Frozen solid for 6 hours. Thawed him out carefully and he woke up complaining about being cold." "And the Proxima Station incident," Communications Officer Keiko Tanaka contributed. "Technically, he was dead for about 10 minutes, but we used a defibrillator, so I don't think that counts as a full death." Vorash looked like his entire worldview was collapsing in real time. This cannot be normal human behavior." "It's not," Lucy admitted. "Jake's just special. We think it's because he's from northern Canada originally. Those people are basically unkillable anyway. Add in the standard human resilience and you get Jake Morrison, the man who refuses to stay dead." "I'm from Edmonton," Jake clarified, as if this explained everything. "Where is Edmonton?" Plix asked. "It's in a region of Earth where temperatures regularly drop to -40 degrees. And people just go about their day," Lucy explained. "They evolved extra stubbornness." Quelix was frantically taking notes. "I need to file an amendment to the death certificates. Or cancel them entirely. But I can't cancel them because I already sent them to 7 different departments. This is a bureaucratic nightmare." Vorash was having a different kind of crisis. "I need to convene an emergency medical council session." This changes fundamental assumptions about human physiology. Does it, though? Jake asked. I mean, I'm just one guy. Are you, though? Vorash pulled up galactic medical records. Computer, search for all instances of humans declared deceased in the past year. The computer thought about it for a moment. 47 cases found. And how many of those humans are currently listed as alive? 42. The room went very quiet. So, Marcus said slowly, you're telling us that out of 47 humans who died this year, 42 of them came back? That is a 90% survival rate for death, Vorash said, his voice climbing into ranges that probably bothered dogs. How is this possible? What happened to the other 5? Oh, those were actual deaths, the computer supplied helpfully. 3 were from species-incompatible diseases, 1 was from a total molecular disintegration, and 1 was from, let me check, yes, from being really, really sure this time. That one has a note that says waited 6 days to be safe. Lucy nodded. Yeah, you gotta be careful. Sometimes humans stay dead. It's a whole thing. The Emergency Medical Council session was convened within the hour. Representatives from 12 species gathered in the council chamber, which was designed to accommodate various physiological requirements. There were seats, tanks, hovering platforms, and one corner that was just a pile of thermal rocks for the silicon-based members. Vorash presented his findings to an increasingly disturbed audience. Let me get this straight, said Counselor Vexthra, a serpentine being from Ophidius Prime. Humans have a biological system that can mimic death so effectively that our medical technology cannot distinguish it from actual death? That is correct. And this system can keep them alive for hours during this death-like state. Also correct. And they've been doing this regularly without telling anyone? They assumed we knew, Vorash admitted, because it's in their medical literature. Counselor Marooks, a crystalline being who communicated through light refraction, flashed a pattern that roughly translated to, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." The implications are staggering, said Counselor Thera, a mammalian species with too many eyes. How many humans have we declared dead and cremated or disposed of when they might have recovered? According to records, Quellick said, consulting his datapad, in the past decade, approximately 200 humans were declared deceased and handled according to standard protocols. Which means, Vexthra interrupted, that we may have killed dozens of humans by disposing of them before they could wake up. The council chamber erupted in what could politely be called organized chaos, and more accurately be called everyone freaking out simultaneously. We need to issue a retraction, someone shouted. We need to rewrite the protocols, someone else yelled. We need to pretend this never happened, Quellick suggested desperately. We need, Vorash said loudly, to admit that human biology is far more complex than we assumed, update our medical databases, and implement new protocols for handling human casualties. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Counselor Marooks flashed. We're supposed to be the premier medical authority in the galaxy, and we've been declaring humans dead when they're just taking a nap. A very death-like nap, Plix offered helpfully. That doesn't make it better, Nurse Plix. Jake, who'd been allowed to observe the proceedings, raised his hand. So, about my death benefits? What? Vorash asked. My insurance. I was declared dead. That means my policy pays out. I'd like to collect before you undeclare me dead. That's insurance fraud. Is it? I mean, I was dead. You guys said so. Got the paperwork and everything. Not my fault your diagnostic equipment isn't good enough to detect human biology. Quellick looked like he was going to molt from stress. If we declare you were never dead, then we have to admit we made a mistake. If we declare you were dead and came back, then we have to pay your insurance and admit humans can resurrect themselves. Either way, we look incompetent. I mean, Jake said reasonably, you kind of are, though, in this specific situation. The council members looked at each other. A silent understanding passed between them, the kind that happens when bureaucrats realize they're thoroughly screwed no matter what they do. What? Vexithra said slowly. If we just classified this as a unique medical anomaly? He's not unique, Vorash protested. 42 other humans did the same thing this year. Then we classify them all as unique anomalies. That's not how unique works. The debate continued for another 2 hours, and would have gone longer if Plix hadn't accidentally left the council chamber's communication system connected to the station-wide intercom, which meant everyone on Station Mercy 7, and through them, quite a lot of the galaxy, had just heard the entire thing. The news spread through the galactic network faster than a virus in a recycled air system. Within minutes, "Human refuses to stay dead" was trending on 12 different social media platforms. Within an hour, it had spawned 17 memes, 3 conspiracy theories, and 1 surprisingly catchy musical remix. The Galactic News Network led with the headline, "Medical Council admits humans are unkillable space orcs," which wasn't exactly what the council had said, but it was close enough for entertainment purposes. Vorash watched the news coverage from his office with the defeated air of someone whose professional reputation had just been fed through a plasma incinerator. "Look at the bright side," Plix gurgled. "At least now everyone knows not to declare humans dead prematurely." "The bright side? Nurse Plix? I'm going to be known as the doctor who killed a human by putting him in a morgue drawer. My career is over." To be fair, he wasn't dead, he was just resting. That somehow makes it worse. Jake appeared in the doorway looking significantly cleaner after his shower and wearing a fresh station jumpsuit. "Hey Doc, so I've been getting interview requests. A lot of interview requests. Do I need medical clearance to talk to the press?" "Absolutely not. No interviews, no statements. We need to control this narrative." "Little late for that," Lucy said, appearing behind Jake. "The crew and I just checked our messages. Apparently everyone we've ever worked with is coming forward with their own human refused to die stories." Vorash pulled up the news feed. She wasn't wrong. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. A mining colony reported that a human had survived explosive decompression and woke up 3 days later in storage. A shipping company mentioned that one of their human pilots had been declared dead after a crash, only to knock on the rescue ship's door 15 hours later. A research station on an ice moon reported that a human scientist had frozen solid during an equipment malfunction, been declared deceased, thawed out for study purposes, and then sat up and asked what year it was. The pattern was undeniable. Humans had been dying and coming back so regularly that it was practically a statistical certainty. "This is," Vorash said slowly, "going to fundamentally change galactic medicine." Or, Quellic suggested, walking in with his datapad clutched like a security blanket, "We could classify all humans as a Category 9 medical anomaly and require special handling procedures." "That's just admitting we don't understand them." "Correct. Which is significantly better than admitting we've been accidentally killing them." The Galactic Medical Council held an emergency public session, which was something they'd never done before and hopefully would never do again. Councillor Vexithra, as the senior member, was elected to make the official statement. She did not look happy about it. "Citizens of the galactic community," she began, her serpentine form coiled around the podium. "The Medical Council wishes to address recent events regarding human physiology. It has come to our attention that human biology is significantly more resilient than previously documented." "You mean you screwed up?" someone shouted from the press section. "We prefer the term incomplete initial assessment," Vexithra continued. "Moving forward, all medical facilities will be required to implement new protocols for handling human casualties. These protocols include, but are not limited to, extended observation periods, specialized diagnostic equipment, and mandatory consultation with human medical experts before declaring any human deceased." "What about the humans you already killed?" another reporter asked. "We, that is to say, the Council, deeply regrets any premature disposal of potentially viable humans. We are implementing a comprehensive review of all human death certificates from the past decade and will be contacting families to discuss options." "Options? They're dead." "They might be dead. The situation is complicated." This was not going well. Jake, watching from the audience, decided to make things worse. He stood up. "I have a question." "Captain Morrison," Vexithra said with the tone of someone watching their nightmares come true. This is not an appropriate forum. Do I get my insurance payout or not? The council chamber went silent. Your insurance payout, Vexithra repeated. Yeah, I was declared dead. I've got the death certificate. My policy pays out 2 million credits for accidental death, so pay up. You're not dead. I was dead. You said so. Multiple doctors confirmed it. Can't take it back now just because it's inconvenient. Quellic stood up. If we pay your claim, we'll have to pay all similar claims. Do you have any idea how many humans have been declared dead and recovered? Not my problem, that's what insurance is for. Lucy stood up next to Jake. He's right. The lucky break was insured through Galactic United. They owe us for the destroyed ship, plus Jake's death benefit. We'd like to file a claim. One by one, other humans in the audience stood up. Humans from ships that had crashed. Humans who'd been declared dead and recovered. Humans who'd been told they shouldn't exist and had the hospital bills to prove it. We're calling our lawyers, one of them announced. The council looked at each other in mounting horror. This is going to bankrupt the medical system, Counselor Maru flashed. Not our problem, Jake said cheerfully. Should have read the human medical literature. The final confrontation came 3 days later, when the Galactic Medical Council, insurance companies, human legal representatives, and approximately 47 different regulatory agencies gathered to hammer out what would become known as the Human Viability Accords. The terms were simple. Humans would receive their insurance payouts for legitimate death declarations. Medical facilities would implement new protocols. The council would rewrite their textbooks. And everyone would agree to never speak of this incident again if they could possibly avoid it. Jake signed the agreement and received his 2 million credit payout with a smile that suggested he'd just won the lottery, which in a way he had. 6 months later, Galactic Medical Facilities had adopted what was formerly known as Directive 447H, Human Death Protocol Revision 1.0, but what everyone actually called the Are They Really Dead This Time checklist. The protocol was comprehensive. When a human was declared deceased, medical staff were now required to monitor the body for 72 hours in controlled conditions, perform diagnostic scans every 6 hours to check for backup system activation, consult with human medical experts before making any final determinations. Never, under any circumstances, put a potentially deceased human anywhere they might wake up confused and alone. Notify next of kin that death status was pending confirmation. It was bureaucratic, time-consuming, and incredibly annoying for everyone involved. It also hadn't failed yet, which was more than could be said for the old system. Varash had become, through no desire of his own, the galaxy's leading expert on human resilience. His paper, Why Humans Won't Stay Dead, a comprehensive analysis of redundant biological systems in Terran primates, had been cited 14,000 times. Medical schools across 12 systems had added mandatory human biology courses to their curricula. He hated every minute of it. Another one? Plix asked, wobbling into Varash's office with a datapad. Another what? Human. Explosive decompression. No vital signs. Been that way for 4 hours. Vorash sighed and stood up. Let's go through the protocol. They found the human in Observation Room 7, laid out on a medical bed with monitoring equipment attached. No heartbeat, no brain activity, no respiratory function. By all conventional measures, extremely deceased. What's our timeline? Vorash asked. 4 hours, 15 minutes since last detected cardiac function, Plix reported. Then we wait. Another 67 hours and 45 minutes. They waited. At hour 6, the backup cardiovascular system kicked in. Auxiliary pumps in the major blood vessels activated, slowly circulating blood to vital organs. Cellular repair mechanisms engaged, fixing damage from oxygen deprivation. At hour 8, brain activity resumed in the primitive sections first, then slowly spread to higher functions. At hour 9, the human opened her eyes. Where am I? She asked groggily. Medical facility, Station Mercy 7, Vorash said. You were in an accident. Am I dead? Not anymore. Oh, cool. Is there food? Vorash pulled out his datapad and made a note. Patient recovered after 9 hours and 12 minutes. First words upon revival related to food acquisition. This is consistent with observed patterns in human resurrection behavior. The human sat up slowly. How long was I out? You've been clinically dead for approximately 9 hours. Huh. That's a new record for me. Varash clicked his mandibles. You've died before? Twice. Once on Mars during a dust storm, once on Europa when my suit failed. This is number 3. Of course it is. The human looked around the observation room. You guys have gotten better at this. Last time I died, I woke up in a morgue drawer. Freaked out the attendant pretty bad. We've implemented new protocols. I can see that. This is much nicer, though I am really hungry. Plix, who'd been silently observing the whole thing, made a gurgling sound that indicated he was having a minor existential crisis. Do all humans just accept death as a temporary setback? The human shrugged. I mean, not all of us come back, but enough of us do that it's not super surprising anymore. My grandmother died 4 times. We stopped having funerals, just called them extended naps. Your species is insane. Yeah, probably. But we're still here, so something's working. Administrator Quelix had adjusted to the new reality by creating 37 new forms specifically for human medical incidents. There was Form H1 for potentially deceased human intake, Form H2 for human showing signs of backup system activation, and Form H3 through H37 for various stages of human probably not actually dead but we're checking anyway. He was, in his own way, happy. Nothing made Quelix happier than new paperwork. Jake Morrison had returned to space with his crew, though he'd upgraded to a new ship using his insurance payout. The Lucky Break 2 was faster, better armed, and had significantly improved safety features. Not that they'd stop Jake from dying if the universe really wanted him to, but it was the thought that counted. He'd also become something of a celebrity. Humans across the galaxy had started calling themselves Jake Morrison survivors, which wasn't technically accurate but made for good social media content. There were t-shirts, there were holovids. There was even a surprisingly popular documentary called Humans Were Not Dead Yet. Lucy had negotiated a very lucrative contract with a shipping company that specifically wanted human crews because, if they die, they'll probably come back and finish the delivery anyway. It was morbid, but the pay was excellent. The galactic community had slowly accepted the new reality. Humans were unkillable space orcs who refused to stay dead, had ridiculous pain tolerance, and thought Death World was a compliment. It was terrifying, but also kind of useful when you needed someone to do something incredibly dangerous. Insurance rates for human employees had gone through the roof, but so had demand for human workers. Turns out having crew members who might survive catastrophic accidents was valuable in the dangerous business of space exploration. Back on Station Mercy 7, Vorash was conducting his routine evening rounds when Plix wobbled up with a concerned expression, which on a blob creature was mostly just wobbling with slightly more anxiety than usual. Doctor, we have a human in for a routine checkup. Room 12. You should see this. Vorash followed Plix to the examination room where Jake Morrison was lying on the medical bed, connected to monitoring equipment. All the readouts were flatlined. Vorash felt his mandibles click in alarm. When did this happen? About 30 seconds ago. I was running the standard physical exam, and suddenly all his vital signs just stopped. Did you start the 72-hour observation protocol? I called you first. Vorash moved to the bed, pulling out his scanner. No heartbeat, no brain activity, no respiratory function. Jake looked peaceful, eyes closed, completely still. Captain Morrison? Vorash said, tapping Jake's shoulder. No response. This is concerning. He was fine 5 minutes ago. What could have caused sudden cardiac arrest? Plix checked the medical records. No indication of any health problems, no recent trauma, no exposure to toxins. He just stopped. They stared at Jake's still form for a long moment. Then Jake's eyes opened. Sorry, Doc, he said with a yawn. Was I out long? Vorash's mandibles clicked rapidly. You were flatlined. No vital signs. We thought you were dead. Nah, I was just sleeping. Sleeping? Sleeping? Humans don't flatline when they sleep. Oh yeah, sorry about that. I've got this thing where my heart rate drops really low when I'm in deep sleep. Mom says I did it as a kid too. Freaked out a lot of babysitters. Your heart stops when you sleep? Not stops, just goes really slow. Like, barely detectable. Comes from my dad's side of the family. We're all heavy sleepers. Vorash sat down heavily in the nearest chair. Of course you are. Why would human biology make any sense? Why would humans have normal, reasonable physiological responses to anything? You okay, Doc? No, Captain Morrison. I am not okay. I am 6 months into studying human biology, and every single day I discover something new and terrifying about your species. Today I learned that some of you fake death while sleeping. Tomorrow I'll probably learn that you can photosynthesize or that you're actually a hive mind. Oh, we can't photosynthesize, Jake said helpfully, though there was this one guy who claimed he could, but it turned out he was just really good at not eating. That doesn't make me feel better. Jake sat up, stretching. Look on the bright side. At least now you know to check if the human is just sleeping before starting the death protocol. There's a bright side? Plix asked. There's always a bright side, Jake said cheerfully. For instance, I'm not dead. You guys get to add another form to your human medical protocols, and I get a funny story to tell at parties. Quelix appeared in the doorway, datapad in hand. Did someone say new form? I'm drafting Form H38, Human Sleeping Death-like State Confirmation Protocol. Of course you are, Vorash muttered. Jake hopped off the medical bed, apparently none the worse for having been temporarily dead by accident. So, am I cleared for duty? You're cleared for duty, Vorash confirmed. Try not to die again this week. No promises, Doc. Space is dangerous. As Jake left, followed by Plix, who was muttering something about needing a vacation, Vorash updated his medical notes. Addendum to human biology research. Some humans exhibit extreme bradycardia during deep sleep, resulting in vital signs that mimic death. This is apparently genetic, heritable, and considered normal by human standards. Recommend updating monitoring protocols to distinguish between actual death, backup system activation, and humans just taking a nap. He paused, then added one more line. Conclusion. Humans are the most terrifying, resilient, and frustrating species in the known galaxy. They refuse to die, refuse to follow biological norms, and refuse to acknowledge that any of this is unusual. Medical science will never fully understand them, and honestly, that's probably for the best. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Vorash saved the file, closed his datapad, and decided he needed a strong drink. Somewhere in the station, Jake Morrison was telling his crew about the time he accidentally died while taking a nap, and they were laughing like this was the most normal thing in the world. Because for humans, it probably was. And that, more than anything else, was the most terrifying realization of all.